Thank you very much. Again, my name, well, okay, I got a bunch of titles. So, Reverend Doctor, Major Chaplain, Jose Martinez. As you can tell, I'm a chaplain by trade, a military chaplain. I'm the 139th Air Lieutenant for the Air National Guard in St. Joseph, Missouri. I'm also a chaplain at Truman Medical Center, which is the Trauma One Center in downtown Kansas City. I also pastor a church called Multi-Nation Christian Church, which is a Haitian American church. I speak a little bit of Creole, but it's really bad, so don't expect me to speak Creole up here. And then I also work for New Church Ministries for the General Church as the Associate Minister of New Church Ministry. And so, oh wow, it messed up there. So here's our thing. This is Storywagen. It's a 1979 VW bus that we have back there if you want to go visit. We created it to be a mobile resource and listening studio because we want to be able to help educate people where they're at about spiritual health. So as a chaplain, that's one of the things that we're really focused on, especially in the military. We're focused on resiliency and the spiritual health domain. So you might be asking, so our mission is to bring stories and awareness of community spiritual health issues as a mobile resource and listening center. That's our mission. So what is community spiritual health? That's a made-up term that I made up. So what I'm defining community spiritual health is a concept that focuses on the resiliency, wholeness, and growth of population's sense of purpose, core beliefs, and moral values through strategic partnerships with community stakeholders that develop sustainable programs that achieve impactful outcomes to spiritual wellness. That's what I'm defining as community spiritual health. When you go to a hospital, if they have a community, they should have a community health program where they have nurses or pharmacists, doctors that go out into the communities, to the schools, local libraries, to teach the communities about health in general. So I'm just tacking in on the spiritual side of things through that. So that's the concept that we're talking about. We have a general definition for spiritual, and so the way that we're defining spiritual is the animating force that gives a person's purpose, and also where the moral values and the core beliefs reside. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about spiritual. So why is this important? So Harvard just came out with a study just not too long ago talking about from 2001 to 2017, the suicide rate for teens, 15 to 19-year-olds, rose 36%. Okay? In the military, we're concerned about the veteran suicide rate. Right now, we're looking at 22 a day is the number. For the teens, like this number represents 19 a day. So they're almost catching up to the veterans, right? 17.9 per 100,000. So that's 1.4 million attempts in 2017, okay? Also in this study, what it states is that over half did not have any known mental health issues. So one has to question what was the reason why a lot of these teens are attempting or trying to complete suicide. In my aspect, from my perspective, it's a spiritual health thing that we're not dealing with. The other things that we want to talk about is other spiritual health issues. We mainly want to talk about, in our first project, it's the moral injury project, right? We're being exposed to a lot of trauma on the news. We may be committing some traumas to other people, causing moral injury. So we're constantly under this thing of trauma. And so bringing about this awareness about moral injury, taking it out from the war perspective, which is fine that we're talking about it for the veterans, we also need to bring it out to the general public. There's people who are experiencing mass shootings. There are people who are experiencing domestic violence. There are people who are experiencing sexual assault. And through these traumas, people are experiencing moral injury. The definition for moral injury in a nutshell is basically this. It is an event that transgresses one's core values or moral beliefs, right? So you could be a witness to this. You could be a survivor of this event. You could be the perpetrator of this event, either through an act of commission, willingly doing it, or an act of omission, not doing something to prevent something. So we want to bring out this conversation about moral injury. So moral injury is very prevalent in our society if we look at it as a whole. My experiences in the hospital, every day I see people coming through our emergency room doors with moral injury, right? Whether it's from a catastrophic event or if just being impoverished and not having shelter. I mean, that is a traumatic experience that's causing some moral injury. So our approach to do this is, first, we want to build awareness. The way that we're building awareness right now is that we are doing a podcast series. We have 6 episodes right now on our website, and you can also gain access to this podcast series through Pocket Cast. We're trying to get on Apple iTunes and sort of things like that, where we are interviewing other chaplains, spiritual directors, yoga therapists, any professionals that deal with the spiritual health realm of health, okay? So we're really trying to build that awareness for communities, faith communities, neighborhood groups, anybody who's interested in wanting to help engage in this conversation. The next thing that we're going to do is the docuseries. So again, the Moral Injury Project is our first docuseries where we're literally filming people inside our mobile studio about them talking about their issues of moral injury and what spiritual health practices that help them through that. Now, for me, listening and storytelling is one of the 2 most prolific spiritual practices that we can do as a church to help the process of healing, all right? The other thing is forming community, so creating partnerships with local stakeholders within the community and helping other churches and other people who are interested in this to create those partnerships. And then ultimately, we want to be a resource center for cultures of care, creating communities of care. That's ultimately what we want to do. That's a trauma-informed care kind of concept where we're helping those local communities, the churches, the Bible study groups, the missional groups, whatever you want to call them. We're helping them get those resources to help their neighbor. And it's all about being the neighbor, right? Mr. Rogers, love him. So the next step is we continue to do the talk with the experts. I'm actually interviewing somebody here at General Assembly that we're going to be doing a podcast. They're going to be in August. And then we're doing the Moral Injury Project and starting filming those series. So those are the next steps that we're doing for this next project. After this, long-term wise, what we're hoping to do is maybe to gather other groups, story groups within different cities, different neighborhoods within our city in Kansas City, and them just repeating the process of being a storytelling group. After that, what we're hoping is to get into a bigger collective where we bring all these groups together and just have like a big old storytelling event. So that's like the long-term range of community building in our aspect, and we want to help other people do the same thing. So with that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, please let me know. We're right back there. Check us out on storywagen.org and follow us on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook. Just type in Storywagen. And it's spelled W-A-G-E-N because it's a Volkswagen bus, right? All right. So thank you very much. Okay, so, all right, so he'd asked, like, what is an example of a story that I could tell? What initiated this whole process is through my military experience. I was at Madigan Army Medical Center doing my CPE. I came across a patient that did not want to accept cancer treatment. So I was in CPE. The doctors came to the office, and they were like, hey, we need somebody to go talk to this person. They got this bad news about cancer. They're not wanting to take the treatment. So I go in there, and it's this gentleman, mid-50s, still relatively young. I ask him, why aren't you wanting to have this treatment? Is there something bothering you? And I was thinking, I didn't know what to expect. So he started telling this story about him as a young man in his early 20s working in the orchards in Washington State. And they would have migrant workers working through these fields. And one day, he had this young boy come to him wanting to work. He was probably about 15, and he wanted to work on behalf of his mom. His mom got sick. And so they didn't want to miss out on the money, so he came out and he said he was skipping school and wanting to work in the fields. The guy was like, I don't know. Okay, I'll let you work. Well, the boy was working so hard that the boy was not taking care of himself. He wasn't used to working in the fields because he was going to school. His mom was working in migrant work because she was trying to provide a better future for him. Well, the boy got sick in the fields because he got overheated, dehydrated. They were out in the middle of these orchards, and so it took the ambulance a little bit longer to get, and they were trying to get him water and things like that. Come to find out that the boy passed away. So he took it on himself, saying that it was his fault for saying yes for this boy to work in the fields, even though he thought maybe I shouldn't have let him. And so he was blaming himself for that. He was carrying this guilt. He was carrying this shame through his whole life up to this point of his diagnosis of cancer. And he thought to himself, well, this is my punishment. I deserve this because I let this boy die. At that time, I did not know the concept of moral injury. I mean, that was back in the mid-2000s. The conversation about moral injury is relatively new. But now reflecting on that was like, I wish I had that back then. And I think there's a lot of people out there that if they had this term, moral injury, they would be able to help a lot more people to work through their spiritual health issue. So that is the story, and that's the thing that drove Storywagen. Thank you.